If you want to be the people ushered into freedom and you want to own and embrace bravery as free people, not as slaves, then you will be a people who, I know it sounds really churchy, and it sounds like something that a preacher would say, but it's just the truth. You cling to all words that come from God. Because words that come from God are pulling you toward something. They're not static. They don't belong in a stance. We're people who often take words from God and build a stance. Words from God are pulling you and me toward something, toward promise and toward freedom and toward the good life. And if we cling to all words that come from God, we will find ourselves former slaves living in the goodness and the glory of God. So Joshua offers these words then, Joshua chapter 23, we're at the end of the story. Verse 6, be very strong. There's that charge again. Be careful to obey all that is written in the book of the law of Moses without turning aside to the right or to the left. As you cling to this word, all words that come from God that are pulling you toward something, be careful not to be pulled in other directions. I understand as a communicator that this sounds anticlimactic, right? That the book of Joshua and the books that come before it and after are full of all of these really wonderful stories and this charge to be strong and courageous. And then when the preacher says, this is what it's like to be strong and courageous, read your Bible, it sounds anticlimactic. But it's just true. That it's not just about your Bible, but that's certainly the beginning place. It's about a life that eagerly embraces every word whispered from the mouth of the Creator of the universe, believing that in those words is life. Good life. The show, how many of you have ever watched the show Extreme Home Makeover? Yeah? Is it still on? I don't know if it's even still on, but we used to watch that all the time, and it was sort of this weekly practice of not crying at the end of a story, right? My allergies flared up every Sunday night around 8 o'clock. There was a story once of a family, and all of the families, the stories were complex, so I won't go into all the details, but one of the parts of the stories, there was this family, and they had adopted several children, and all of the children, they knew this going in, had special needs, had special difficulties. One of the girls, I think that she was probably 14 or so, was blind. They lived in a little bitty home that wasn't big enough for them, and it was falling apart all around them. The 14-year-old girl shared a room with two other siblings, both who had special needs. She shared a little single bed with one of her siblings. She loved to read, but they didn't have the money to buy the Braille books for her, and they didn't have the room to store them because they were extra large, and so she had just a couple of books in her room, and that was really about all that she had. The home was difficult for her to navigate, and so if you know anything about the show, you know they come in and it's an amazing show. The show started out, they would renovate homes, which was really cool, but then they just started totally destroying the old home and building a new one, and each one got better than the last. And so at the end of the show, when they say the family is behind this bus, and Ty says what? What does Ty say? Yeah. Move that bus. They move the bus, and then what's the family do? They go nuts, absolutely berserk, right? They fall on the ground. They start weeping and crying and celebrating. They're completely overwhelmed. They were prepared for the moment, but then who could be prepared for such a moment? This is your house. But this particular family, they were very thankful, but sort of peaceful. Like maybe a house wasn't all there was to their existence, right? They just kept saying thank you over and over again. They didn't fall on the ground. They didn't weep. They went into the house and they started to show the family all of the things in the house. And they started to show the little 14-year-old girl who was blind all of the things that they had prepared for her. One of the things was that all of the containers in the kitchen had barcodes on them. And she had her own little scanner. And so if she wanted to know what was in a container, instead of putting her hands in it to touch it, she could scan the barcode and it would say Frosted Flakes or whatever was in the container. And this is when the mother began to weep. And she proclaimed, "You have restored dignity to my daughter. Now she doesn't have to reach around and touch it with her fingers anymore." The blind girl just said, "Thank you. Oh, thank you. Do you want to go see your room?" "Yes, thank you." "You have your own room." Oh, thank you. We'll come this way and the halls are wide and there's bars on the wall." "Oh, thank you for that." Took her into her room and showed her all of the things that had been prepared for her own room. It was large, with a large closet and her own bed and a desk to study at and a computer with all of these technological gifts for her. The computer could speak to her and she could speak back to it. And she was not to be undone. "Oh, thank you." No tears, no crying. They let her explore the room, and there was this moment. Do you remember this, anybody? She had explored almost the whole room, and then she went to the far wall, and she touched what was on from this part of the wall all the way to the other side, and she began to weep. And she said, oh, Mom, it's the Bible. It's the Bible, the whole Bible. Yes, dear, it's the Bible. It's just yours. The whole Bible from beginning to end." She began to run her fingers across it, took up the whole wall, the whole Bible just for her, Genesis and Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers and Deuteronomy, all the way across the Old Testament and the New Testament. She was becoming undone. It was hers, word from God, all hers in her own room, just for her. I'd like to be like that. Maybe that 14-year-old knew something that we don't know. Most of us have been going to Bible classes all our lives. We've never become undone like that over a word whispered from God. Believing that this word could be yours, that has been given to you as a gift, and if you would cling to it and love it, love all words from God and embrace them, then you might become brave and courageous. You might be ushered and pulled and dragged into a good life. Not good life by our old life terms, but good life by kingdom terms. So, church, if you want to be brave, cling to every word you have ever heard that has come from God Himself.